Dr. York, who was the founder of the Ansarullah community in New York and other parts of the States. That was popular for a period of time, and Muslims were deluded into thinking that they were actually Muslims, and they sat on the council, of masjids in New York and so and so. And I wrote a book on them called the Ansaar Cult In America, exposing them to be not from Islam at all. But in fact, they were enemies of Islam. I exposed their beliefs, taking it right out of their books and comparing what Islam says, what they said, and that basically, alhamdulillah, blew them out of the water. After that, they fell apart. Not before admitting, Dr. York said that they really weren't Muslims anyway, they were really Jews, and then he changed his name to Rabbi Reuben, and he went into the Jewish thing, right?
Nobody could stand up. And don't tell me they ignored us. If they did, there wouldn't have been no cult book. And they should have let the cult book get printed in Jamaica or in America, so it wouldn't have been so obvious that the Saudi Arabian world was behind it. Because you, as a black man, a Nubian, cannot go to Saudi Arabia and indulge in any business. Bilal Phillips tells them that now. I got a latest tape on him speaking to them when he tells them to go to Belize. Not to Saudi Arabia where there's money. Not to Kuwait. He's telling them to go to Belize out of his own mouth.
Each and every person who prays here at Moultrie Taqwa will now pack his bags and head for Saudi Arabia. Because Saudi Arabia will not allow you to make Hitler there. And there's no point asking, why won't Saudi Arabia allow us to make Hitler there? Because they won't. And Allah will not ask us, why didn't Saudi Arabia allow us to make Hitler there? He'll ask us, why didn't we make Hitler? So it means that we have to find elsewhere. Because my desire is to make that Hitler also. I know some of you may wonder, well, you've been over in Saudi Arabia for the last 16 years. You thought you made Hitler there. No, I told you. It's not possible to make Hitler there. I would like to. Mecca, Medina, a beautiful place to live. But you, as a non-Saudi Arabian, cannot buy land there. You cannot own land there. So therefore, you can't make Hitler. The place I found is a country which used to be known as British Honduras. It is now known as Belize. It has borders with Mexico, and you can drive there from here. It's about an hour and a half flight from Miami.
And you have not been able to trip, trap, or catch me in any of your little tricks, just like they couldn't trip, trap, or catch Senenda, Jesus, 2,000 years ago. He made a fool out of him every time. And every time you try, like your little stupid cult book, I said, oh, you want to play games, huh? Don't make me mad, I'll tell you about yourself. So you let some fool, Bilal Phillips, write a book about me. I had to stop what I was doing, which was addressing the Jesus story, and address you people. You satisfied now? I wrote a book called 360 Questions to Ask a Sunni Muslim. You haven't been able to answer questions. Don't you wish you could have left me alone?
With these convictions, one would think that all was done, but the manhunt was just at its genesis and not about to stop. In fact, it was the beginning of a long hunt in the war against terror by the United States. The continued hunt saw many more tagged to this attack, and this is how Dr. Bilal Phillips' name finds itself on America's blacklist. The US government named him as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 bombings and has placed him on America's no-fly list. The US government named him as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 bombings and has placed him on America's no-fly list. The US government named him as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 bombings and has placed him on America's no-fly list. Born in Jamaica, although Canadian, Bilal Phillips calls himself a Muslim teacher, speaker, and he is an author. He considers himself an ultra-conservative reformist, advocating for a traditional literal form of Islam. I meet Dr. Bilal Phillips on his trip to Uganda, where he is scheduled to address a public lecture on distant learning through activities of his own founded Islamic online university. Working closely with a corporate Muslim group, and despite the various security chains, Phillips has been able to make it to Uganda. I put it to him on how he came to be blacklisted on a terrorist list. I put it to him on how he came to be blacklisted on a terrorist list. I put it to him on how he came to be blacklisted on a terrorist list.
Well, one of the people who ended up being jailed for the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, I came across him, I met with him. I guess he was under surveillance, so they have pictures, of him maybe meeting me, whatever, in a masjid. So you asked me, didn't you challenge it? I wanted to. In fact, one of my students, former students, was a lawyer, immigration lawyer. In fact, one of my students, former students, was a lawyer, immigration lawyer. In fact, one of my students, former students, was a lawyer, immigration lawyer there. I asked him, I contacted him, I said, what can we do to deal with this? Because I don't like to be on any kind of a list. At that time, it was just like a co-conspirator list. This was back in '95 when a list had come out, Mary Jo White's list come out. So I said, I'd like to get this thing cleared. He said, well, okay, you need to come, and when you come, be prepared to be arrested. I'll be there. We'll inform the authorities, so when you come in the country, they'll likely hold you, and we can fight it from there. I didn't like the idea of going into an American jail and having to fight my way out of there. That was just not something I was prepared to do. I didn't like the idea of going into an American jail and having to fight my way out of there. That was just not something I was prepared to do. I didn't like the idea of going into an American jail and having to fight my way out of there. That was just not something I was prepared to do.
Meanwhile, he has earned himself security fences in countries, including Australia, where he was blocked from entry on the advice of the national security agencies. In 2010, he was banned from entering the United Kingdom by Home Secretary Theresa May for holding extremist views. In April 2011, Phillips was banned from re-entering Germany as persona non grata, while in 2012, neighboring Kenya banned him from entering the country over possible terror links. June 2014, the Bangladesh Intelligence Service also ordered Phillips, who had gone to Dhaka to give lectures, to leave the country. September 2014, Phillips was arrested in the Philippines for inciting and recruiting people to conduct terrorist activities. He was also questioned on his possible links with terror groups including the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS. While threat and tragedy cannot be entirely controlled, much intelligence vigilance can go a long way in limiting damage. As for Dr. Bilal, perhaps the Uganda security could have known better or had a sniff. I'm Moses Walgembe, NBS Investigates.